Section 1. 4 responsibilities of a coach in different sports. The first responsibility of a coach that I'll be speaking about is that of a coach's legal obligations. Before a coach even starts coaching, they must be DBS checked. DBS stands for Disclosure and Bar Act Service. This is to ensure 1. The coach is who they say they are, 2. To ensure the coach has a clean background. This is more important than anything when they are working with children, because if they have anything that should stop them from working with children, then it should be alerted to the relevant people in the club. This is because the welfare officers at the club should not put the performers at risks. This also can include someone who is volunteering. Even though they may be volunteering and may not be there permanently, they could have something that should be brought up and seen to by the relevant people. Next. All coaches have to follow a code of conduct. This is to ensure that the performers and the coach are not put in positions where they can become vulnerable. The code of conduct covers all kinds of situations that a coach may encounter whilst they're with their performer or performers. It also informs a coach on how to deal with any of the situations they may encounter, e.g., if a child comes forward and claims that they're a victim of abuse, then the coach must act in the right way to make sure this is dealt with in the correct manner. This brings me on nicely to a coach's duty of care. The duty of care makes everything as safe as it possibly can be. This could be anything from health and safety checks to making sure there is a first aid equipment when a performer may need it. The duty of care was put in place to make the playing field as safe as it could possibly be. This is because the performers have enough on their minds already and don't want to worry about things that are irrelevant to them, like is there going to be poo on the pitch. The coach must ensure that they are aware of the legal obligations that they have condemned to before they start coaching. A coach has many difficult things to do whilst they are coaching and may not have as much time for people to speak to them about concerns they might have. They must also be able to identify a child at risk from any kind of abuse. They have to be able to identify if someone is being abused just from the way they are acting. Because many victims of abuse would be hesitant to talk about it because they would think that it would make it worse for themselves. However, if the coach is told by a performer that they are a victim of abuse, they must tell the relevant welfare officers immediately, regardless of what the player wants. This is because it is their duty to do this, and if they are found with withholding information, they can be let go from the club. The next responsibility of a coach that I'll be talking about is about promoting equality and equal opportunities. A coach must give everyone who is in their squad the same chance to showcase their skills regardless of their age, gender, ability, sexual orientation and race. This is because everyone has the potential to succeed in sport and everyone should have the chance to do this. The coach should be prompting equality because they can act as a role model for their players. And if the coach is treating everyone equally, then their players will follow suit. The coach should also ignore any stereotypes that are presented to them by the media and others around them, e.g., girls shouldn't play rugby because it is too physical. This is obviously not true, but the coach has to ignore silly little things like this to make sure they are unbiased and fair selection in multi-gender sports. The coach also has a responsibility not to discriminate against anyone, whether it be a player, official, spectator, or another coach. The coach teaches their players around them how to act, and if they are acting in a discriminative manner, then the player may feel like it is acceptable to do this whilst they're playing. The coach must also always pick a team on their skills and not who they are. This is because it is the only way that a squad should ever be picked, and this reduces any chance of discrimination and bias that could be surrounding the coach. If a coach is fair and ignores certain stereotypes and promotes equality in all forms, then they are extremely valuable for performers because they will focus more on the performer and will teach them how to act when they need to. The third responsibility of a coach is that of professional conduct. Professional conduct is how a coach should act and behave when they are with their performers or players or anyone around them. This leads me on to my first section, the grid section, setting good examples. A coach is a role model for their players, and their players look up to the coach because they're a source of all wisdom in the sport, and they know the correct way to teach something because they have done it numerous amount of times before. For example, it is vital that a coach teaches the correct technique for tackling in rugby. This is because it is a very physical component of the sport, and if it is learnt incorrectly, it can become extremely dangerous for everyone involved. This fits in well into professional conduct because the coach has signed an oath to say that they will teach the correct things. Also, if a coach arrives early to training and wears the correct kit and brings everything they need, the performers are more likely to copy this. This is how the coach can set good examples. Moving on to the orange section, primary objectives. A coach's primary objective is to make everything as safe as it possibly can be for both the coach and the performer. Usually, at many sports clubs, there is someone who is called a welfare officer. This person is there to help the performers with any needs they may have or if something has been concerning them within the club. This is crucial in a sport like gymnastics, not only because it is very hands-on, but it is very dangerous. A coach has to decide whether or not it is safe to teach a certain trick. This is thing or not. This is because it could put the performer into discomfort because there is a risk they could seriously get hurt, like e.g. they could break many bones whilst they try this. Moving on to the red section. The most important role of professional conduct is for the coach to respect the law. This is because it separates out what can and can't be done. Human rights are also a part of the law, and many people forget that coaches have to abide this. For example, if it was a very hot day and a coach was running a kids' football training session, they must ensure that there is enough water for all of the children involved. This is because they've signed an oath which states that they are responsible for the players/performers' well-being when they're in their supervision. And if they do not comply with the human rights, then they are vulnerable and can be charged with negligence depending on the severity of the case. The fourth and final responsibility of a coach that I'll be speaking about is the coach being responsible with health and safety. Health and safety is one of the most crucial responsibilities of a coach. This is because it can determine whether a coach is able to continue coaching or if they have to leave. There is approximately 5 key aspects of health and safety that a coach needs to take into account before anything can happen sporting-wise. These are the responsibilities, the action plans, is there any legal guidelines involved, what risk assessments have been done, and finally, consistent checking. So, firstly, the responsibility. This can outline who is responsible if something did go wrong. This could either be the coach or the performer, but by the coach informing everybody involved, then the activity is as safe as it can be because the coach would say, e.g. in gymnastics, the coach would say, do you want to try a back handspring today? And if it goes wrong, I'm here to help you, but if it goes wrong, it's my fault. And the performer would majority say yes, because they have had the backing from the coach, and the coach is there to help them. And if something went wrong, they know that the coach would be there. Next, action plans are also used so that the performers know what is going on during the session they're about to take part in. This is necessary because if something went wrong and somebody externally was aware of the action plan, they would know what activity the person was doing and where the activity was taking place to send help. This could normally happen in an outdoor activity centre because there's many different things going on at the same time, like rock climbing, abseiling, and kayaking. If something went wrong in either of the activities and there was a mentor sat in a separate office and they got a phone call, they would know exactly where to go and send all the help. In many different sports, there are legal guidelines that must be followed before anything can happen. An example of this is kayaking. An instructor can only supervise up to 7 people, and if there was 8 or 9 people, then another instructor must be found before anybody can enter the water in a kayak. If there isn't another instructor, then it is illegal to go on with the event, and the instructing company can be sued if something went wrong with the people, or in general, they can be sued if someone went out on the water. A risk assessment is an active document. This means that it's always changing because when something goes wrong, somebody has to combat why it went wrong and what can be done to prevent this from happening again. Risk assessment should also be updated if something goes wrong elsewhere that doesn't impact you immediately, but the way that you can put procedures in place to stop it happening is crucial. Finally, things should always be checked. If something is not being checked before a session of intensive training at a gym and something goes wrong, then the the trainer is liable to a lawsuit. It is always the coach's responsibility to make sure all information given to them by the participants is 100% correct and always up to date before any sessions. This is because many activities are not suitable for people who have suffered from heart attacks, epilepsy, strokes, etc. So if an instructor didn't check with a certain person whose medical information had changed since the last time they came in for an intense session and they had an epileptic fit, then the instructor is vulnerable, and it is not a very good place for the gym company to be. Thank you.